Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Behind Black Business, where we feature a Black business within the Chicago area. And as you know, the reason we do this is to help circulate dollars in our community. And one of the problems that we're having is we're not aware of all of the wonderful businesses and all the wonderful people that we have in our community. And we encourage you to those businesses, because if you support Black businesses, as we tell you every week, those dollars have an opportunity to come back to you. And when you're supporting a Black business, then that business is more than likely to hire Black people. They're more likely to do services with other Black businesses. They are more likely to contribute to causes. They serve as role models for our children. And so it should only be natural that you would want to support those businesses in your community that are going to give back to you. And those resources, as they come back, they help to improve these services in the communities that we live in. So we're big supporters of Black businesses. And so tonight we have a wonderful guest. All of our guests are wonderful, but this is Dr. Vincent Johnson. And Dr. Johnson, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight.
And thank you for inviting me too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Dr. Johnson was our featured guest at the Frontline Bookstore in Hyde Park this past Saturday, rather. He was the author of a number of children's books, and he's also a storyteller. But he's also a medical doctor where he specializes in internal medicine and pediatrics. And he's a public speaker. He's a medical advocate. So he carries a lot of titles. And so we are very proud to have you here tonight.
Well, thank you again.
Absolutely. So we're going to get started with the interview, Dr. Johnson. I want to start out by giving you an opportunity to tell us, who you are, where you grew up, if you're a native of Chicago, or if you were born in another city or state, just to give us a little background on who Dr. Vincent Johnson is and where he came from.
Yeah, so I grew up on the west side of Chicago in an area that many people might refer to as KTown. I grew up on the 4200 block of Fillmore, and we lived in a two-flat building. I walked to school. I walked to Our Lady of Lourdes School, and I always had an interest in science and math, but more on the science side. And I just remember my father, as he raised me, he always said, thinking power is stronger than muscle power. And so even though I love to run around, play basketball, things of that nature too, just having that ability to think and solve problems. And so that was really a large encouragement. And then my mom, she encouraged me a lot because she was saying, well, it's no goodness of your own. You're blessed by God. And so realizing that is nothing necessarily so special about me, but I have to apply the God-given talents that I have too. So that was such a fantastic point when I was in my childhood on the west side of Chicago. But having those two parents there and just encouraging me, what was so exciting too, because my mother was a cosmetologist. And so she was an entrepreneur. And I just remember us, when I was little, we would sell snowballs. So we had that business, and my mother had her cosmetology business. My father had worked at Sears and Roebuck, which was right on Holman, off of Roosevelt
I
Road.
remember where that is.
And I remember us, we would buy toys there. But also he did handyman work in the evenings and on the weekends as well too. So sometimes I remember actually waking up in the morning, seeing my father, greeting him and sending him off and saying goodbye to him as he goes to work. And then
Hmm.
some evenings he would just be so busy that he would be coming in from a handyman job. And then I would see him as I'm getting ready to go to bed. So I respected the idea of hard work and putting forth effort. So yeah, so that was very influential.
Well, that's a good word you used, that you respected it, because a lot of parents do try to instill values in their children. We don't always listen, you know, or maybe we come to a certain point where we think about it, we think about it and say, maybe mom was right or maybe dad was right, but you listened. And I remember Mr. Adrian Hunter, who owns Ivy League Tutoring,
Okay.
and he's been on our podcast. He's been in the community for over 40 years, providing very high levels of tutoring for students. And he's made that statement. It's those children who listen to those messages, those little messages that are given by their parents. And they may seem like small things, but they really are impactful. And you internalize that and you listened.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because sometimes in the moment, as a child or when you're younger, you don't think about that. At least I didn't think about it as much, but definitely all that treasure and that wisdom to kind of reflect back to has been so powerful as well too. So
Mhm,
I definitely appreciate the wisdom. Sometimes you don't appreciate it in the moment, but then you say, "Oh wow,
mhm,
I've got this book of wisdom to refer
mhm.
to as I continue my life," and then you can add on to it and grow smarter and wiser as you live. So yeah, that was very helpful.
And KTown, I'm from the West Side,
Okay,
and I'm familiar with KTown. I have family members that lived in KTown,
okay,
and friends that I went to high school with that lived in KTown, and that was a nice little community. The people that lived over there seemed to have a nice sense of community. But I think we all did. I'd say back in the day, back in the 60s, 70s, 50s, even maybe, uh, where there was a stronger sense of community on the west side of
right.
Chicago.
Yeah, and in fact, when I think about my childhood, I think about we really had a family-based setup because I lived in a two-flat building. We lived on the second floor of a two-flat, just mostly brick buildings. And I remember the Clarks, the Mack family, and how we all of us owned our own properties. And I remember across the street from us was a factory, and so. It was just nice being in this nice community. I mean, things happened
Mhm.
around us, things that may have been possibly violent, but we had this
True.
close knit community, and so it felt good to be on your block. Parents would, other
Looking
parents,
out.
other kids would just look out for you, and
Absolutely.
so it was a really good childhood from that standpoint as well too. So I really appreciated that, and it really left great memories.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you decided to become a physician, but maybe let me back up. Was this something that you always wanted to do, or did when you were much younger, did you have other inspirations before you decided to become a physician?
So I wanted to be a physician ever since I was 6 years old. But one of
Oh,
my sisters, because I have three older sisters, one of my sisters said that she heard me in the bathtub at the age of 2 saying that I wanted to be a physician. So I don't remember that, but I know
okay.
definitely at 6 years of age, I knew that I wanted to be a physician. And I think it was just my interest in science and solving problems and biology. And I can't really think of any other deeper interest or reason behind it. Just I just really love to problem solve, love to connect with life science, and
Mm-hmm.
so it was something that I said I'm going to do this. And I thought about sometimes I meet a neighbor or someone in high school or after you graduate from high school, they say, "Are you still thinking about that doctor stuff?" And
Uh-huh.
yes, yes, and
Wow.
because that was the only thing that was on my mind really. And I say that I was born as a creative person, as a writer, but I think I was called as a physician. So definitely that science part was a part of me, and I think that no matter what kind of field I would have been into, I think I would have still been trying to problem solve, think about
Hmm.
science, and I probably would have still led into some type of a medical field
Okay.
because of those interests, definitely.
So did your teachers at school, I know, there was always a science fair. I don't know that they do that all the time now. But there was always a science fair, or was there, and were there teachers that, saw that light in you and encouraged you along the way as well?
Yeah, so I remember being at Our Lady of Lords. I went there from kindergarten through eighth grade, and yeah, had a lot of strict teachers, but yet focused on good problem solving, making sure that you do your work, get your homework done. But it was really fun. I think about teachers like Miss Johnson. We had a Miss Johnson in third grade and Miss Johnson in seventh grade as well too. And I just had a knack for science, and I liked learning about physics. I like learning about chemistry and biology. And of course, at the elementary school level, it's more simple, but I think they saw it also as something that was fun for me. And yeah, we definitely did have science fairs, and I remember doing a project on the heart, the human heart, and
Mm.
talking about the atrium and the ventricles, and so that was scary at some level, but yet fun to kind of just present because at some level I always felt like I had a role in speaking to the public. And so
Mm.
I'm not sure where that came from. And I was thinking, well, I don't know if it'll be a minister or speaking to someone or holding speeches, but I always had that feeling to do that. And so I think that that helped me too, as we had to do, science presentations in
Sure.
school. And that was fun and encouraging. But yeah, definitely having those teachers there, what was very helpful, especially when they see a certain interest. Maybe you don't have all the talent at the time for it, but you have the interest for it, and then they help lead you into that. So yeah, that was very pivotal.
That was great that you had that kind of encouragement. That was
Ye-
absolutely great.
Yeah.
So where did you complete your studies for your degrees in medicine?
So I went to Loyola Stritch School of Medicine. I had gone to the Loyola University Chicago on the Lakeshore campus. And actually, at that time, I didn't know a lot about the medical school at all. I just knew that I wanted to become a physician. And I remember one of my teachers in biology, Dr. Dominique Castagnetti, talked about being able to think and not just memorize. And so we might study what's called the Krebs cycle, also called the citric acid cycle. And he would say, okay, now you know it, now you know the mechanism. So what if we have this bacteria on Mars and it's using sulfur instead of carbon? And you might say, well, this isn't fair. Let me go to the dean and complain. But it was about being creative because you could
Sure.
say whatever you wanted to, as long as it sounded logical and it fit the basic mechanisms, then you would do well. And so I like that because he had said, well, Vince, you may be in contact with people from Harvard or Cornell, and I want you to leave my class knowing how to think. And so
Absolutely.
I was a biology major at Loyola. I liked writing a lot, and so they had actually made it as a part of the curriculum to make sure that practically in every class we were doing some type of writing project as well too. But yeah, so I went there to Loyola Lakeshore campus, and then as I got more information about the medical school, which is in Maywood, Illinois, I had joined this group called the Health Professionals Advisory Committee called HPAC. I don't know if it still exists, but they would give you mock interviews. They would help you get together your application, your resume, so you can present yourself as best you can for medical school. And then I remember actually interviewing for medical school, and that was at the time where HIV was coming out. And I just remember that I had this one interview, and there was a surgeon, it was a Black surgeon, actually, a pediatric surgeon that had interviewed me. And he asked me about this patient. He says, well, what if you have an infant that has HIV? And then he takes it into, okay, well, now he's 5 years old and now he's an adolescent. And he kept asking me. And so I was like, well, I don't know a lot about HIV per se, but I was trying not to at least reveal that in my answers, but I was just kind of talking about this is how I would approach this. And then I got to one point that I said, well, I'm not sure what he wants me to say or what he's looking for, but I said something that he got off of that topic and we went to something else. And so, but I do think it's just kind of just a regular, pressure or the nervousness that goes into an interview. But I did appreciate him pushing me because, I did well and I got accepted into medical school.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an exciting opportunity to see a Black physician interviewing me. I don't think he
Mm-hmm.
gave me any easy time, but he wanted to challenge me and make sure that what's written on paper is matching what he's seeing in real life. And
Absolutely.
so medical school, what was 4 years, we did the first 2 years are basically the classroom, the didactics, and then the second 2 years, third and fourth year, were the clinicals. And so we went to different hospitals. Sometimes it was staying at Loyola. Other times it was going to other hospitals. Like, say, for instance, I was over at St. Mary of Nazareth at one point, doing some rotations there, examining patients. And so you did different rotations in different areas. So it might be surgery, internal medicine, pediatrics. And so that gives you a chance to kind of look at what specialties you like. Like you might have thought, well, I love surgery, but then you have an experience with it. You might say, I don't like it as much, or I want to maybe shift it a little bit, maybe from being an adult surgeon to maybe a pediatric surgeon, for instance. And so that's where my education was in medical school. And then I had decided actually to study internal medicine and pediatrics. I was thinking about ophthalmology initially, but then I loved when I had worked in pediatrics. When I did my pediatric rotation, I was taking care of the smallest baby in the NICU, which is the neonatal intensive care unit at Loyola.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a beautiful experience because you had a lot of smart physicians, you had a lot of responsibility to present your patients, you had to have all the details. And so that was very, very impactful. And then on the adult side too, I had a lot of smart, very giving, attending physicians. They're the ones that actually teach you. We also had residents that taught me as well. So we were over at Hines VA Hospital, for instance, and I got to work with veterans and other patients when I was over at Loyola and other hospitals. And so it really helped instill in me that I really wanted to practice as an internal medicine pediatric physician. So the big difference, say, from a person that is in family practice is that I would not deliver babies, but I became board certified both in internal medicine and pediatrics.
Okay, so it sounds like your experience as a student, a Black student studying medicine, was quite positive. You got a lot of support, or how would you describe your experience as a Black student trying to go through the medical field? Was there any differences that you noticed, or any challenges that you had? We'll say on the up and down side.
Yeah, so I would say that there were a few other Black students that I had seen when I was in medical school and that were in our classes. Since I was in the first and second year, there were Black students that were in my current class I was with, also in the second year class as well too. So it was positive seeing role models or people that look like you be in that situation, but I definitely wasn't in the majority. When it came to being on the floor rotations, there weren't as many Black doctors as other races, for instance, and so you might have some people that say, I'm in the cleaning service, or I may be in the phlebotomy, and they really appreciate seeing a medical student because you're going to be a physician and graduating. So that was very encouraging as well too. Sometimes there will be a time where you say, I can't prove it, but I feel like someone may be biased, possibly because of the racial situation. Sometimes it's hard to prove. Other times people can be very direct
Mm-hmm.
and will say, well, hey, it's because you're black, or I don't like the way you look or the way your hair is, for instance. And so those can be things that can be very disheartening, and at those times you have to put it in your heart and be prayerful. I remember calling my mother at times, calling my father at times too, because sometimes a test is hard. You have to study. Sometimes you don't
Okay.
get the grade that you want to. Sometimes someone is harsh to you as well, or
Mm-hmm.
says something to you that it's all about them and nothing about you, and
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of laying something upon you, some kind of prejudice or bias, but you have to keep working through it. And
That's
so
right.
it was very helpful to have a supportive family. I will say
Absolutely.
that, and family is a part of who you choose as well too. And so, but
Okay.
I was glad to have a birth family, a praying mother, a very supportive father, and I realized too that within that I could a lot of times tolerate more than I thought I could. I remember one time I was up late and I was drinking coffee to kind of stay awake so I could study for a histology exam, for instance, when I was in medical school. And I remember one of my sisters saying, "Oh, Lord bless him. He's trying to study for this test." And I thought about, well, like, histology is not, at least it didn't appear to be as tough as, like, say, physical diagnosis or some of the other classes. But I
Mm-hmm.
did appreciate having a supportive family, because,
Sure.
yeah, so that was very helpful. I think on the positive side, I remember, I believe it was Arthur Burden. He was actually one of the black deans at the Watertower campus. He came over to Loyola one day, and he was just saying, "Hey, I'm here to support you. I'm here to be here for you." So it was good to see people in powerful positions. So you have your colleagues that are right next to you. You have people downtown. You have people in administration that are willing to be there for you as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Although sometimes someone can't be in the trenches with you, you have to go through that struggle, on your own at some level. But then you've got that spiritual support, emotional support as well to you. You can call people. So I think
Sure.
that was very helpful.
Sure.
Yes.
I remember when I went to graduate school for speech pathology at
Okay.
the University of Iowa, and there were a handful of Black students, but I made friends with them. We were maybe in different departments, uh, but we managed to get together, provide support, whether it was a ride to the campus late at night, because often the medical library, they stayed open 24 hours, so you might go there and stay, study. So the friendships, and those people are still my friends today.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
We're still good friends today. But we also networked and supported each other, even though we were all in different fields. So
Yeah, and when you mentioned that, I thought about one finals week when I was at Loyola on the Lakeshore campus. I just remember one time I was just sleepy. I was so sleepy, but I needed to stay up. At least I wanted to stay up all night. And I just remember one of my friends had said, "Well, Vincent, his name was Patrick. Vince, stand on your head. If you stand on your head, it'll wake you up. The blood will rush to your head." I thought about, what are you talking about? And then, but so he helped me stand on my head, and I don't know if it helped or not. But I said, okay, I was geared up and ready to roll, and so I had studied up until dawn actually,
okay. Oh,
and
that
so
was bringing all that blood and oxygen flow to your brain, right?
yes, I guess he said, yeah,
Yeah, that's a
refuel the
yoga.
brain.
That's a yoga posture.
Yeah, so
Yeah, the headstand. That's great. So how long did it take you to finish? How many years were you there? Loyola is a good campus. I've utilized their services for my mom, and so they
okay,
took really good care of my mom at Loyola. So how long did it take you?
okay. So it was 4 years of college, and then I did 4 years of medical school. And then after medical school, you basically will then they call match for residency. So you basically, based upon the rotations that you do, whether it be pediatric surgery, for instance, that you experience as a medical student, then you apply for a residency. And residencies would occur generally at hospitals. And so you would say, okay, I want to have training in pediatrics or surgery. That would be a surgical or pediatric residency, for instance. And so with my specialty, particularly, it's called internal medicine pediatrics. And so there were two possible roads to go on that. One was going to a program that had a separate internal medicine program, which is usually 3 years internal medicine, and also a separate pediatric program. And pediatrics is also 3 years. And so I had interviewed at hospitals that or programs that had separate programs, and then I interviewed places where they had a combined program. And so one of those was, for instance, William Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan. So they had a combined program, and I actually got more drawn to the combined program. It was 4 years, and so 2 years of pediatrics and 2 years of internal medicine. But I wanted to be under one director. So we had a one director of both the internal medicine pediatric program versus being under two different directors. I mean, that may have worked out well, but I like the idea of being under one director that would help steer me through the rotations. And so that was 4 years. And so then based upon that training, then you basically then will look at different job offers. And so usually you might have a recruiter, or say if I wanted to go back to Loyola, for instance, I would have actually maybe called them or called their in-house recruiter to be hired there. But I wanted to actually, and you might think, well, why did you go to Michigan? Or if I had stayed in Illinois, I would have gone back to Loyola, but I thought that it might have been better to just have a little bit more of a diversity in my background, go to somewhere a little different, actually. And so in my residency, I found it really very rewarding, because then I could have even more of a practical approach to treating children and also adults. But I was especially drawn to the pediatric side, because it was from neonatal, the babies that are just
Sure,
born.
where everything
And
begins.
yes, definitely. You've got a lot of different developmental levels. And so one of my friends calls it going from diaper to diaper. He said that is a full spectrum and scope. And so I really enjoyed that. And so usually in the first 2 years, you're doing more of the fundamentals. And then during your last year, you're doing more what they call electives. And so if you want to go to, like, say, a dermatology office, learn about skin, go to a rheumatology office, look at joints, arthritis. And so that generally is how that runs. And so, so my residency was 4 years.
So let's look at the internal medicine piece
Okay.
and the pediatrics piece. What would someone, people choose physicians, they choose primary cares. What would you choose an internal medicine specialist for? What is it that you would specialize in terms of helping an individual?
Yeah, so an internist or an internal medicine physician is a physician for adults, basically. So you are basically a generalist or a general physician, but you're focusing on adult health. So you should be able to then talk to a patient about what their concern is. Examine that patient. It's said that with a history, being talking about what's going on with you, and then physically examining somebody, that you should have a high yield of actually diagnosing them. So I believe it's somewhere in the area of like 80 some percent or a low 90 percentile of knowing what a person's diagnosis is. So then that should help lead to if you need to do certain blood tests or certain imaging tests too. But there's also a thing called anticipatory guidance that can go into things like, say, pediatrics, but you're asking about adult medicine. So you're asking people about preventative things. You talk to them about their diet, for instance, and you're not trying to get it too complicated, not trying to dumb it down. But I know one of my colleagues would say, he would just say, if everything on your plate is white and brown, that's not cutting it. Put some colors in there, some red, and could be some bell pepper, could be some tomato. And so an internist is going to be a person that is specializing in the general care of the adult. Now, under internists, if you wanted to do a more specialized care, people like pulmonologists or lung specialists, they're also internists that decided to go and specialize in a certain area. So they're still under that umbrella of internal medicine. But you might say, well, now I want to be a lung specialist, or I want to be
Mm-hmm.
a hematologist, oncologist, which is a blood and cancer
Mm-hmm.
specialist. So it breaks off into several specialties. And so some people say, no, I want to focus on the adult side. And then with the adult side, you can decide, well, I want to have an outpatient practice, meaning that I'll see patients in the office. Some people just specialize and focus on the office or the outpatient setting. And some doctors will then see patients in the office and then also see them in the hospital. But I eventually, after graduating from my residency, I had gotten an outpatient practice associated with West Suburban. And so I was rounding in what's called rounding in the hospital. And then in 2001, I had to discover what was called hospitalist medicine. So a hospitalist is a physician that specializes in the inpatient care. And so that's generally what the scope is of an internist.
So, as an internal medicine specialist or doctor, what are some of the major concerns that you would have, especially with a lot of your Black patients, people that will come in? What are some of our major issues? We probably heard them, but yeah.
So hypertension or high blood pressure, very
Hmm.
important. Um, Also, too, in our community, looking at the impact of breast cancer, stroke, so that when you look at things like, say, high blood pressure, you think about, well, it can make the heart more strain on the heart. It can make the heart muscle thicker, what they call hypertrophy. That can affect the vessels that go to your kidneys, and so uncontrolled blood pressure or hypertension can lead to heart failure, heart damage. It can lead to kidney failure, kidney damage. It can actually damage your eyes too.
Hmm.
We'd be concerned about diabetes because there's type 2 diabetes. We used to call it adult onset, but we were finding that children would also get it too. So we call it type 2 diabetes. And that tends to relate to when you're having a more of an insulin resistance. And then there's also one in which you have a lack of insulin, that's type 1. And so you get concerned about things like diabetes, for instance, as well too. So diabetes can affect and be associated with things like stroke, affect the eyes as well too. So those are some of the major areas. You know, like I said, high blood pressure, diabetes, keeping that under control, and you want to speak to patients about exercising. You know, as
Hmm.
well too. But also too, if when you go to the physician, you want to think about what is your support structure, because it's not just all
Sure.
about drinking water and eating. It's about
Absolutely.
what is your mental health and do you
Hmm.
support system. So you might hear people say, well, do you feel threatened at home? Do you have a good support system? So that is so important as well too. So that's the general scope of what an internist would talk to you about.
And I'm sure that adds a lot to the stress. I've said more recently here that people go to the doctor, to get their organs, their body, to check on their bodily functions, but there also should be a mental health component, because the people are under dealing with so many different things and under a lot of pressure, uh, and a lot of stress, you know and
Precisely.
then being Black in America, you can add some weight, some significant weight to that.
Precisely.
Hmm.
You know, and definitely, sometimes we were in a situation when I was over at Bellwood Medical Associates. That was my first practice. We had a primarily Black community, and sometimes our patients, wouldn't show up as soon as we would have liked them to. So sometimes things can be more advanced, and it is I think a sense of wanting to make sure people are more comfortable with you. I remember one time when I had left my medical practice in Bellwood, I was at a hospital. And I was in what they call fast track or urgent care, and that was a Black gentleman that I had diagnosed diabetes, and I had a slower day that day in urgent care, and so I said, well, I'm going to sit him down, make sure I get him connected with what to eat, follow up, and so he had said, well, thank you, but I'm going to go downtown to a white physician, and so I found it puzzling at some level because I had spent so much time with him, and it made me almost say, okay, why do I internalize this? Was it something with me? But I said, well, no, I did right by him, but his perspective was that he would get better care somewhere else. But at least he knew what to at least start his pathway with healing and actually reversing some of the effects of the diabetes and getting his blood sugars under control. So.
Okay. So then on the other side, with the pediatrics, with our Black children, what are you seeing in terms of our major health concerns?
I think as far as I think about the mental health of our children, I think about one time I was telling you about the anticipatory guidance portion of things, and so you speak to parents about reading to your kids and connecting that way. And I remember, and I actually talked about it when I was at Frontline Bookstore on John 11, and the idea that I was talking to a father who brought his son in, and I talked to him about reading. He was saying, I don't do any reading. I don't like to read. And I thought to myself, wow. And you could see the look on his son's face. And so, that is a concern as to
Mm-hmm.
the fact that children can hear what we say, but a lot of times they'll imitate what we do as well too. So I see situations in which maybe people or parents want children to do something different from what they're saying, but and sometimes they need to see those actions as well too. So it may not have hurt to just say, well, maybe I can see my father, reading and holding a book as well too. And then diet is very important in our children as well too, because we look at, childhood obesity, and we want to make sure that we're
Mm-hmm.
exercising, getting outside, moving around, and getting enough water. And so, all that is so important as well too. And then, just there's also pediatric hypertension as well too. Not as common, but I think that when you're looking at children, and when I look at my practice, a lot of things were just the aspect of the mental health too. And not saying that you had someone that needed to see a counselor per se, but just that impact of the family dynamics, and making sure that
Absolutely.
child feels important, feels loved. I just remember when I was in high school and them speaking about the basic human needs. We have a feeling to belong, a feeling of being loved as well too.
Mm-hmm.
You can have some people that don't feel loved in their own household, and they might go out looking for it in a relationship or trying to find a relationship to
Mm-hmm.
support what they're missing at home. So I think that is so important as well too. I wasn't just about trying to say, well, okay, you have an ear infection, let me give you an antibiotic, but what is some of the support structure there? If both parents weren't in the home together, then are they seeing the mother? Are they seeing the father? What kind of dynamic is that? What kind of dynamic are they having with their siblings as well too?
So I can see how that whole internal medicine and pediatric piece comes together, because when you're dealing with the children, you're also dealing with the parents, and those people that are around that child, and you're dealing with their health as well. So I could see, that being a very, very good combination, where you could provide some really good support, you know, and advice, to people, to your patients.
Yeah, that is a very good point, because a lot of times commonly we would say, especially if we have a patient, a pediatric patient that's in the hospital, we say we're treating the entire family, because you definitely
Mhm.
cannot treat the child without explaining what needs to happen for treatment. Whether it
Mhm.
might be like, say, if a child came in with breathing issues and you need to give medication, and so the parent needs to understand it as well too. But you're right, it's basically a family dynamic, and
Absolutely.
you can't treat one person without having treatment and knowledge, for the other person as well.
Because even I work with a lot of students with disabilities. So
Okay.
there's, the autism, there's the, anxiety, there's the bipolar, there's all of these behavioral issues and communication issues that the children have, and it becomes a struggle for the parents as well. So
Right.
it is a dynamic, And so I like what you've done. I think that's wonderful.
But thank you, definitely. Thank you.
Hmm. So, in terms of the number of, do you see more Black students coming into the medical industry, especially at your level as a physician?
I'm saying more definitely. I think that when I look at my nieces and nephews and their friends, I think they get a sense of inspiration when they see other people. But definitely,
Hmm.
we are a smart people. We
Hmm.
like math, science. Sometimes it's a struggle to kind of think about, can I succeed at it? But I think just as well as you see, role models, you can see them in your household, you can see friends. I think anything that gives a spark for that, you can say, oh, wow, I can do that too. And,
That's
and,
right.
and so, and I think that the message is that, just like my mom said, no goodness of your own. You're not so special that you couldn't have been lesser or in a worse situation than you are. But I think when
Hmm.
they can see you connecting and
Absolutely.
talking to them about it and then encouraging, because
Hmm.
I've had people that students that I've talked to, and they say, I'm interested in medicine. Is it really hard? I'm like, well, yes, you have to apply yourself, definitely.
Hmm.
But if you want to do it, you can definitely do it, and it's a matter of studying, because when I've studied, I've always done well. Sometimes you have a situation where you don't study as hard as you can, or but it offers an opportunity to even do better. So I say yes, and I think that part of it is being encouraging, and also just kind of stating who you are and what you are, because I think people enjoy hearing, yes, you are a physician. Yes, I am a physician. I am a pediatrician. I am an internist. In
Hmm.
my case, I'm double boarded. I remember, just as an example, one thing funny, I do some real estate investing. And I just remember one of my friends, when I bought my first house, I was mopping the basement. One of my friends who's an internist came over, and she said, Vincent, you're mopping the floor with your double boarded hands. And I'm like, well, at the end of the day, it needs to be done. So yes, I am seeing more of it, but I think that part of it is seeing all the possibilities, seeing role models, being encouraged, and just kind of saying you can do it too.
Well, I am so happy, how you're emphasizing the impact of role models, because that's one of the things we say is so important about having Black business owners is they do serve as role models to children. They
Yes.
see, no matter what it is that you're doing, if they are impressed by what you're doing, that's something that they may be inspired to do as well. So the whole idea of role model is very important
Yes.
and it's played a
Definitely.
huge role in your life. And so, what areas do you see mostly the Black students are going into? Any particular area of medicine do you see them veering off into, or are they just kind of all over the place?
I would say a variety. I know a lot
Okay.
of. I thought about college, because a lot of students will become, if they want to be a science major, a biology major. I have some friends that have been chemistry majors and physics majors, but I think about a lot of people think about the life science of biology and saying, okay, well that's something that's going to be giving me a core like the anatomy, and then I can kind of go into other specialties. But yeah, I've known Black neurosurgeons, both male and female, pediatricians, general surgeons, neurosurgeons, endocrinologists that will specialize in things like, thyroid conditions, diabetes. So it is a variety. And I think that that's the main thing, because, you know, there's maybe one thing that you might hear about on TV or in a magazine, but yeah, there's a multitude of different specialties, and definitely a lot of students are trying out and looking in different areas. So like dermatology, for instance, psychiatry as well, to mental health, and so
Mhm.
definitely a variety. And I think it's important. I would just encourage people that see what your interests are, and likely there's a specialty that would fit that as well too, that would apply to that as well. And so there's a lot of different combined programs. There are even programs nowadays that combine getting an MD degree with an MBA as well too. And so
Okay.
it's a variety of different programs. You can
Good.
definitely, I won't say write your own ticket, but there's a lot of programs that can actually fit a lot of the flexibility and a lot of the creativity you have in your own mind about what you want to do with your own career and with your own life.
Okay. So now you've actually moved from practicing to advocacy, the advocacy level. Would that be a correct analysis?
Right. So I'm doing a thing now called physician advisor, and I would just say that that shift, getting into more of the advocacy aspect, occurred when I was doing hospitalist medicine. I had started what was called a nocturnist, and so that's a hospitalist that specializes on evening work. And so I was complimented on my work ethic, and so then after being hired as a nocturnist, I was at Central DuPage Hospital at that time, and then they made me the director of the hospitalist group, and I got more into leadership. And I said, I wanted to not just affect one patient at a time, but look at overall processes that go on too. And so in my role as a physician advisor, what I look at is teaching and educating physicians about documentation, because you have a lot of power in the word. And so writing down what you're doing for your patients, and how you're treating them. And so that's in writing it down. And I would tell medical students that, when you look at what's called your assessment and plan, which is the message at the bottom of your note, you're giving a message to the next person about what's happening and what's going on with that patient. So they can know what's going on and can pick up from that point, kind of like a relay race almost. And I think too, the other exciting part of it is looking at denials. Sometimes you'll have a situation in which there might be a insurance company that denied an inpatient stay, or some type of, like, even could be even be observation that they denied, and I help to advocate for the patient to get those denials overturned, and support that. And then I also look at what's called patient status, and so in general, Medicare looks at patients being in an inpatient or outpatient category, and there are certain criteria, certain symptoms and things, and certain lab values that can support an inpatient admission. So I want to advocate for patients, advocate for physicians and nurses for the work that they're doing. And so I do a lot of that work. But then a lot of it goes into other areas, like, say, revenue cycle, for instance, as well too. But those are the general areas that I look at as far as, is advocating and educating, and making sure that we're advocating for patients and for physicians.
So, how would someone find you, in the scheme of things? Because often a patient has some issues and they go to the social worker. They say, well, the social worker is the person that maybe can connect everybody together. But for someone like you would you be under patient advocacy, or how was they find someone like you at a hospital?
Yeah, so I'm specifically under physician advisor, but I work in the administrative suite. I also work with the case or care managers, and also the social workers as well too. And so if you happen to get admitted to the hospital, and there was a question about, whether you should be in as an inpatient or outpatient, or if there was a question about a denial from an insurance company, then I will be the person that the case manager might talk to, or maybe someone else that they've talked to in the hospital. Just like in the last maybe 3 months, I had a situation in which there was a physician that came to me because a husband had said, well, we got this denial letter. What's going on with this? I thought that we should be covered for the inpatient stay. And then I was able to look that up, and work with a branch called utilization management. And we found out that actually the insurance company did cover it. They had submitted more of the physician's notes and the records, and that was actually covered. So I was able to get back to him within 10 minutes and say, oh no, get back to the family and let them know everything is covered, because that can create a financial stress for families too. You're
Sure.
already in the hospital for one reason. You don't want to have to carry a financial burden, or that stress around that as well too.
So, is this at a particular hospital, or do you do this in general? A referral source in general, or you are at a particular hospital
Yeah,
with
so
this service?
I am at Ascension St. Joseph in Joliet.
Okay,
There are some companies that do consultation work, where they'll actually freelance and hire consultants to work. But I work at the specific hospital in Joliet.
okay, great, great. Well, we don't want to. We are I mean, we're getting almost close to the top of the hour. We have to
Okay.
mention, because you were initially introduced to me as an author,
Right.
and I saw your books and I thought they were so beautiful. The displays in them and the subject matters, wonderful books for, with Black images of Black children. And then the messages were very cultural. And so then I found out you were a storyteller too. So we invited you to come to Frontline, to bring your books and do the storytelling there. And it was a wonderful event. The children were very engaging and listening. And so what inspired you to go down that road to write children's books?
So I loved writing, and I would just say that I discovered the impact of writing when I was in elementary school. I was in eighth grade, and I just remember us going to a luncheon with another school, another eighth grade class, and we had to write thank you letters. And so I wrote, something about like, well, thank you for the hot dogs or the food, what have you. And my teacher got back to me and said, well, Vincent, they put your letter up on the bulletin board as a letter that impressed them. And so at that I realized, wow, at that age, you can impress people or impact people through your writing. And so my father would always tell me stories when I was growing up about when he was little. And I would say, well, tell me about when you were little, Dad. And then my mom would tell me stories. And so my three books are, one is called Malik and the Magnificent Glowing Light. It's for
Mm-hmm.
children 4 to 8 years of age, about a father-son relationship in which they get to build a science project together, a flashlight. And that was actually a reflection of one of my own experiences with my father, because my third grade teacher had built a flashlight with the eighth grade, but we weren't going to get a chance to build that. And so that inspired that story. There's one called Of Corn Silk and Black Braids, which is a book for children 6 to 9 years of age. And that's about a little girl named Sarah who doesn't feel good about herself, doesn't like her hair, and how her aunt helps her realize her inner beauty. And that was
Mm-hmm.
inspired by an experience that my mom had when she was in the South, because she would play with the little white girl, blonde white girl, with all the racial tensions going on. And then because of the tensions, they were not allowed to play with each other. And my mother would run into the cornfield and play with the corn silk because it reminded her of her friend. But because my mother was a cosmetologist, I took it in a little bit of a different direction, and I wanted to look at the aspect of self love and that impact, but then also too how your family can bring that love and help you realize your own inner beauty. And then the book Daddy's Good Cooking is for children 6 to 9 years of age. And that is a book about a father's love of food, family, and togetherness, because my father taught me how to fix an electrical socket, how to put tar on the roof, and how to bake a cake. And so just basic survival skills. So that is what inspired that, just a lot of my family stories, because my parents would tell me about stories that were very encouraging, but my father always talked
Mm-hmm.
to me about stories. I just remember sitting on his lap when I was little, before I went to bed. He might read to me, but mostly I would just hear the story, him telling a story. And so that was so impactful. And when I think
Yeah.
about storytelling, I think I said earlier that I've always felt that I've had a role in public speaking. And so I used to be a member of the Fox Valley Storytellers Guild. And so I've done a few events with them. So I just like connecting. I think of myself as a teacher, and I describe teaching as sharing my enthusiasm. So if you can imagine
Mm-hmm.
a teacher, a math teacher, for instance, getting the students as enthused as he or she is about teaching
Mm-hmm.
math. And then I
Mm-hmm.
call my storytelling expressing my enthusiasm. And so,
Sure.
so I really enjoy both of those.
Now, do you have other books?
I have some books that I'm working on in the making. I
Oh,
have a
you're working.
sequel that I'm working on to Of Course Silk and Black Braids, in which Sarah is a little bit older and getting a different hairstyle. I'm trying to do a reworking of the Malik book, and in which some of my friends have talked about, well, maybe you could give instructions on how to build a flashlight as well too. But they're just a host of other stories. But those are two that I'm looking at right now and refining.
So what is your take on what is your take on online reading versus actually having a book to read?
You know,
What's your take on that?
I think reading is good, but I think it's great when you can touch a book because when you think about children, I mean, you're making those connections, those brain connections when you're turning a page. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so there are developmental milestones where you can turn pages individually and start go from turning pages as groups to turning pages individually. So I like if you can touch a book, feel a book, connect with it. You know, we've got our phones, for instance, you can read there, but I'm a really strong advocate of having a book and touching it. You can sit with a child in your lap before for bed, read to your child, you know, connect with them that way. They can point to pictures. You can flip a page back, and that is so organic. And so yeah, I think that is very powerful and very valuable. Like I said, it supports the very development of children as well too.
Okay. 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 Well, listen, this has been a wonderful interview. I'm going to bring Doris in to tell us about our book of the month because we really support literacy and Black bookstores. I'm a speech pathologist. Doris is a teacher, a retired teacher, and we know how important reading is. And so to have someone like yourself to realize that this is important enough that we need to bring this to our children, this is a great thing. And so we really appreciate you coming on. And can you tell us where we can purchase your books?
Yeah, so right now you can purchase the books at everywhere.com. That's a bookstore that's in Maywood. I've since my June 11th event at the Frontline Bookstore, I have books there as well too, and I'm also going to have them at Underground Bookstore as well,
Okay,
outside of
great,
Chicago.
great. That's great. All right. So now you know where you can get the books.
Yeah, now you know.
Okay. All right. Doris?
Denise, if you don't mind uh, sharing the name of the book because I don't have it. I didn't talk to you about the name of it. So if you don't mind sharing that.
Okay, sure. I can do that. Our every month we have a book giveaway. We put a bookstore on our website and they're there for the whole month and they get to select a book of the month. And so this month it's Afriware. And Afriware selected The Black Wall Street by Hannibal Johnson. And it's a book about during the legal separation that was going on in Tulsa. Black people from all over America came to that town and they created a mecca, a black mecca. And we all know the story of what happened in Tulsa when they burned it down in the 1920s. And then in the 40, I understand in 42 from that book, they actually started to rebuild the town. But then when integration came in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, there was a decline. But right now, there is a resurgence of that Black Renaissance in Tulsa. And so that's what this book is about. And so all you have to do is subscribe to our website. And at the last podcast of the month, which would be on the 29th, we will name the winner. And the winner will receive a copy of that book. We pay for the book and the delivery. So that's how important we feel reading
Now,
is.
now I have read that book 2 times, so I
Mhm.
would seriously encourage everyone to pick up the book because it is a blueprint of what we can do today, and it's very
Absolutely.
important that we start duplicating what our ancestors did in the past. Because
Absolutely.
as you can see which way we're going in terms of not having any businesses, and everybody else is coming into the community selling products that we should be selling ourselves to our communities. So it's a
Right.
very good book. So I would encourage again everyone to pick it up and read it. And Dr. Johnson, it was just very delightful listening to your interview. You were so smooth. In fact, you could put this interview in a book. So, and it's just admirable. It just shows you the importance of children have a father in the home. Fathers are so important. And I think to a large extent, that's what we're missing today with a lot of our children, particularly with our boys. So I want to thank you for sharing this information with you about what your dad shared with you, and I can see how much it impacted you in terms of you becoming a doctor and also in terms of you becoming a writer. So I want to thank you again for this beautiful interview
Absolutely.
and for coming on our show. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you. It was
Okay.
my pleasure, definitely.
And we ask our audience, go to rrgbc.org. This podcast, along with all of the rest of our podcasts, are on our website. They're archived on our website, so you'll be able to watch this again. Usually, it goes down for the night, and then it's on for the duration by tomorrow afternoon. And we also ask that you go to our website and make a donation to rrgbc.org. We are a nonprofit organization, and so the work that we do is for the community, to help the community.
And if you go on our website, you can see the different things that we've been doing in terms of trying to help Black businesses and saving Black businesses. So please go to
Absolutely.
our site.
And this Saturday, we have Asada Kirkland. She will be at Frontline from 1 to 3, talking about the metaverse, virtual reality. I had an opportunity to experience that with her. And then she also authored a book about beating Black children. So she wants to talk about that. And then the last Saturday of the month, which is the 25th, Mama Edie, the renowned storyteller, will be at Frontline from 1 to 3 o'clock. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and have a good night.
Very good evening. Have a very
Right.
good evening.